Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. And this week I'm going to be continuing kind of my AAR series a little bit. And I wanted to go over the one-day TACMed EDC class that I took from Lone Star Medics at the beginning of February. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to do any direct cross-posting with Caleb at that time. Caleb, my bad. I kind of dropped the ball on that. But I do want to make sure that I highlight kind of the class in the same way that I did the Dark Angel Medical and give the same kind of overview as I did with the Green Ops class, so that if it's something that you're thinking about, you're a little bit better equipped to make that decision. So just kind of starting out again like I normally do, what the class is and isn't. I will caveat it with this. My understanding is that there are a couple different versions of this TACMed EDC class. The one that I took was specifically the one-day classroom-only version. I understand that there is a version of this that is also offered with a range component as well, but that is not something that I can speak to directly. So what the class that I took is exactly that. It is a one-day classroom, hands-on trauma medicine class, specifically focused on the type of injuries that you would encounter from social violence. So effectively, the main kind of wounding mechanisms are bullets and knives. What it isn't is it is not a full scope trauma medicine class, and in at least this version, it is not a live fire class. So again, just make sure if you're going to sign up for it that you understand exactly which version you are actually signing on for. So it was a great class. I mean, for as much information as was covered, it was kind of impressive that Caleb managed to pack that much content into a single day. It was jumping in with kind of the hierarchy of priorities. There was some initial focus on moving casualties in terms of drags and carries, which I found immensely useful, as well as then the kind of triage of being able to identify the various wounds within your casualty to make sure that you are prioritizing care appropriately. One of the things that I really appreciated was that he took the time to break down some of the little niches and nuances and specificities of some of the various medical gear. A lot of trauma classes will teach you how to use a tourniquet, but a good trauma class is going to teach you the difference between how to use a cat tourniquet versus how to use, say, a soft T wide, because while they are fundamentally mechanically similar, there are some little elements from one versus another that you need to be aware of depending on which one you're using. So that was immensely helpful. Also, there were some little details in terms of wound packing that I definitely appreciated as well, because some of these little tweaks and variations on the technique can just sometimes improve their efficacy. And it's just not a bad idea to kind of refresh this information on a regular basis anyways. So like I always do with these, I like using the short-barreled Shepherd's 3x3 model because I think it gives a nice, concise summary of the whole class. So the top three things that were covered in this one-day version of the TACMed EDC, first and foremost, was scene security. That is something that is very heavily emphasized throughout the entire day to include the practical exercises at the end. So just something to kind of be aware of. And even if you haven't had the opportunity to take a class like this yet, it's definitely something that needs to be top of mind, because if the scene is not safe enough for you to render aid, then you need to be cognizant of that because you want to make sure that you are not just becoming another casualty. The drags and carries, while not a major component necessarily, there wasn't a huge amount of time spent on it, was definitely a major focus. Again, partially due to the practical exercise of it, but also just from a standpoint of it's a handy little aspect to know, because if somebody is wounded, where they fell may not be the ideal place to render aid, regardless of if it was trauma from a violent encounter or something, kind of more run-of-the-mill. It's definitely a good component to have in your skill set. And the third major focus of the class was, again, the fact that it was all violence-induced wounds. So, again, we're talking about mostly penetrating wounds from either bullets or blades. The biggest three takeaways that I got from the class: number one, I'm harping on it, but the security of the scene Caleb does a great job of hammering home the importance of that. And especially when you're in the midst of the class and so much of the information that you're discussing is on the application of skill set, it is very easy to get sucked into the task at hand because you've got somebody that is theoretically writhing around in pain and bleeding on the ground. And so it's very easy for that to suck you in and pull your attention before everything else has been addressed. So that is definitely one of the biggest takeaways that I had. Another one was there was a very heavy focus on the need for chest seals. It's something that gets addressed in pretty much every trauma class that I've taken. But Caleb does a really good job of articulating why certain components are necessary. And he doesn't necessarily prioritize chest seals above a tourniquet. However, he does a very good job of articulating why you should make space and make sure that you have chest seals included in whatever your EDC medical is. The other one is, and this was one of the things that I really appreciated, was you sometimes hear folks talk about how the cat tourniquet is a little bit more user-friendly for one-handed application. And Caleb addresses that. I'm not going to necessarily go into too much detail about it, simply from a standpoint of I don't want to kind of take away from his coursework. But I will say this. The cat is maybe a little bit more intuitive with less instruction. However, once you understand how to apply the soft T wide one-handed, it really isn't any more difficult than the cat. And so I appreciate that, because the soft T is my preferred tourniquet for my EDC ankle kit because it is lower profile. I can get away with having a full-size mechanical tourniquet on my ankle. I've got one of the older gen ones that doesn't have the little windlass clip on it, the little C latch that it catches into. And so that helps kind of keep things sleek and streamlined, even under a slim cut pair of trousers. That was the major sticking point that I had with the cat tourniquet, was that retaining clip was just a little too bulky for me to really make it work. And so those are kind of my three biggest takeaways. Now, in terms of three things that I'm going to be doing differently, because this is really fresh off the heels of the Dark Angel medical class that I took only 9 months prior, there's not a whole lot that is getting overhauled and being done differently. However, the two biggest things that I will be doing differently are, number one, I will be including a chest seal in my EDC ankle kit. And then not necessarily that I would be doing this differently, but just making sure that I am cognizant of the scene security aspect if I'm ever presented with the need to render aid in a circumstance like this. So this one is a little bit more brief, but again, it was a 1-day class as opposed to a 2-day class. And so I just wanted to kind of give you an introduction of what you can expect. It is a fantastically useful class. I definitely think that it's one that even if you had trauma training before, like I said, it's something that is a good skill to keep up on. So if you haven't taken one of Caleb's classes, this is definitely a good one to sign up for. And again, I cannot recommend it enough. So if you got any questions, drop them down in the comments. If you haven't already, join us over on the Facebook group at Bespoke Solutions. And other than that, hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe and stay sharp.